Hello everyone and welcome to Autocad Tips and Tricks presented by CAD Microsystems. Today we'll do a welcome. I hope everyone feels welcome. Welcome to our webinar and an introduction. We'll talk about who is CAD Microsystems, and for that matter we'll talk about who am I. And then I'll showcase to you some AutoCAD tips, shortcuts, and a few of my favorite commands. Now a little bit about CAD Microsystems. We are a consulting firm specializing in software, training, professional services, and BIM expertise for commercial and public sector customers in the design, build, and operate industries. We have a team of industry-recognized experts, published authors, registered architects, engineers, construction experts, and top-rated speakers at Autodesk University and Built. Our customers call us when they are frustrated with their design process and technology and want to improve efficiency, add new capabilities, to win more work, and to stay competitive. We take an educational approach to solving our customers' challenges and are laser focused on helping achieve each organization's business goals, which is why I'm here today presenting this webinar. My name is Darren Moore. I'm an application specialist here at CAD Microsystems. And I've been with CAD Microsystems for about 15 years. But prior to that, I was 10 years in industry using AutoCAD, various versions of AutoCAD, to design and draft drawings for MEP consultants and fire alarm and so forth. And much of my time now is spent in the classroom teaching brand new users how to use AutoCAD, sometimes level 2 users and specialized clients and so forth. So I love AutoCAD. I have since I first started using it, and I enjoy getting a chance to do some of these webinars, so I hope you enjoy our presentation today. Let's take a look at a few tips and tricks. Let me maximize my AutoCAD. So we're looking at AutoCAD 2021 here, and one of the things I always like to say is that I didn't like getting new AutoCAD when I was in industry. I didn't like the idea of having to learn where new commands were and so forth. But now when April, March of the year comes around and new AutoCAD comes out, I'm pretty excited about it. And getting an opportunity to do some webinars is kind of fun. My approach might be a little unorthodox. I don't like to read from a script if I can avoid it. So I've sort of written a script in AutoCAD, which is where I am most comfortable. And I'll sort of zoom in and I'll just kind of get started with some pet peeves that people have, or when I have folks in class, they may have issues with parts of their interface going missing. I think oftentimes things can go missing, like the ribbon or the command window. And one of my simple tricks to restore that looks like this. I'm going to first of all, I'll just right click over any portion of the ribbon and I'll close it. And I've seen that before where users have issued a right click menu and they didn't want that right click menu, so they click close on that menu, which closes the ribbon. And you might even dismiss by accident or on purpose dismiss your command windows. This is a very stark environment. This is not unlike what AutoCAD looked like when I first started using it back in the early 90s. Well, an easy trick to restore your missing interface elements is to come down to your application status bar. That is where your model and layout tabs are, and come to this little gear icon that is fairly far right of center. And this gear icon is called workspace switching. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up this workspace switching menu and I'll switch to anything but the current workspace. So I'll go to 3D modeling, and that was enough to bring back the ribbon. It brought back the command window, not the way I had it before, but it brought it back in the default display mode. Now I'll go back to workspace switching and I'll switch back to the workspace that I was in before when everything started going missing. I'll go back to drafting and annotation. And there we have it. So I've brought back all my workspace elements, such as my ribbon. My command window has been restored. Again, it's currently in an undocked mode. So what I'll do is I'll just left click and grab the grip on the extreme left side. And now I can just drag it anywhere I want. And I'll pull it down into my status bar a little bit, and that will force it to dock or anchor. Now I know not all AutoCAD users like to have their ribbon anchored taking up this much drawing window space. It's a preference of mine for some of the commands like fillet. If I start the fillet command, you'll notice there's some settings. I can read the settings. The fillet radius is set to 1 foot. The mode is set to trim, so I don't have to guess. I know because I'm using a docked window and it has a couple lines of information that what my settings are. One additional tip I'd like to show to you is back in the workspace switching menu, there's a workspace settings, and one thing I recommend is to not choose the option to automatically save workspace changes. If we had saved the workspace changes and the ribbon went missing, the command line goes missing, that is a change, and it will retain those changes. Now it's not impossible to get the ribbon back in other means. If I just close the ribbon, and I'll get rid of the and you can kind of see here with the command window, it says Control 9 to bring it back. The command to restore the ribbon is actually ribbon, R-I-B-B-O-N. I'll hit enter, the ribbon comes back, and then I'll hold Control and the number 9, and that brought back the command window back the way I had it. So there's a couple ways to get your interface elements back should they go missing. I'm trying to keep these tips organized, so I'm doing a little bit of interface tips, or a few interface tips here. So the application menu is the big A in the upper left corner of your interface, and it has tools that allow us to create new drawings, open existing drawings, and so forth. And one of the things you'll see when you initially open your application menu is the recent documents displayed. These are documents that I've worked with recently, and the default mode is recent documents. There's another mode here that is set that is open documents. I'll set it to open documents, and so I currently have 3 documents open. Now I don't prefer to use this method because of the recent addition, and by recent I mean maybe the last 5 years or more. The file tabs have been added that really make it easy to see what drawings you have open. I just have 3 drawings open. If I had 30 drawings open, it would be a little tougher, but I only have 3. So I'm going to go back to the application menu, and I'm going to change my setting from open documents to recent documents. And by default, we're showing 9 documents. In my average day, if I'm not teaching, I'm viewing and opening and checking and whatever a lot of different drawings. So one of my tips is to go to your options menu and then come to your open and save tab. That's the 3rd tab from the left, open and save. And then on the application menu, or in the application menu area, you can see 9 is the number of recently used files. I'm going to change that to the number 20. And then I'll hit OK. Actually, the maximum is 50. That's a lot, so I'm going to just go with 20, and I'll hit OK. Then I'll come back to the application menu, and now you can see there's far more files here. So if I open and close and save 20 or so files in a day, I won't have a problem getting back to the file that I use. These recent document links are shortcuts back to these drawing files, so I don't have to open and browse into several separate folders. One additional tip is if I'm going to be using tips and tricks, layer translator names, I can pin these. You've probably seen this in other software. You have the ability to pin documents to your application status bar so they don't cycle off after you hit the number 23 or whatever. These 3 drawings will stay on until I unpin them. Kind of a little bit of a little bonus trick there. Okay, let's talk about some layer tips. When I first started using AutoCAD, I think I tried to avoid layers as much as possible. I had a student in class one time. He's actually in my class more than once, and we do a fair amount of drawing in our level 1 class. We do a little less drawing in our level 2 class. And in our level 2 class, this gentleman kept saying, "Ugh, I just want to draw, dude." And I kind of feel the same way. I just want to draw. I don't want to create layers and so forth. But layers are a huge organizational tool in AutoCAD. They will save us work in the long run. They do pay themselves back if they take a while to create. And if you're like me and you've taken time and explored AutoCAD, you'll notice that there are nearly as many layer tools as our drawing tools. It's been a while since I've counted them. There's something like 22 layer tools. They're somewhere in the same order of drawing tools. I think of AutoCAD as a drawing program, but it's got as many layer tools as drawing tools. So let's talk about some of my layer tips. One is to maximize all columns. When you get newer AutoCAD, a lot of times the layer property manager might be minimized, like we see mine here. I've kind of minimized it. And part of the reason is I believe the folks at Autodesk who make the software, they want us to focus mostly on our drawing. The drawing is the most important thing here. So the layer manager is often collapsed in size. It's smaller than it could be. And often times your columns are also collapsed. They are just collapsed based on what the last drawing was or what have you. So in our level 2 class, we do about a half hour of sort of advanced layer exercising. And what I'll do here from the level 2 class, I'm going to right click over any one of these headers. You have headers in your layer manager called status and name and open, on, freeze, and so forth. I'm going to right click over, it doesn't matter which one, I'll right click over any one of these headers, right click, and from the right click menu, most of this menu is geared towards dismissing any of these columns except for name, and in this case plot style, because the plot style is color dependent in this drawing. So you could dismiss any of these properties to sort of minimize the clutter in your layer manager. But what I'm looking for in this menu is maximize all columns, and I'll choose maximize all columns. And what that does is it opens up each column so it's just wide enough to show me the longest layer name, the longest color name, the longest line type name, and it just makes it easier to read. The layer manager is often optimized. The columns are optimized by default. If I open that menu again, right click, and you'll see optimize all columns. Optimizing is just setting the column width so I don't have to use the scroll bar to see any of the properties. Well, sometimes I want to see all the properties in their entirety. Right click, maximize all columns. There we go. So now I can see that a lot better. See those columns much better. Then moving down here, my next tip is new layer notification. This is a setting that was added to AutoCAD, I want to say in about 2008. And there's a number of settings in your layer property manager, and the settings are in this sort of universal gear icon. We saw this same icon down in workspace switching. So now I'll go up to my layer settings and I'll click on this. And a lot of times, again, when you get new AutoCAD, you have a setting that is active called new layer notification. And whenever you add new layers to your drawing, AutoCAD by default will evaluate new layers being added, and it will evaluate either new XREF layers only, or it will evaluate all new layers, right? So in this scenario, I'm going to get a notification down at the bottom right corner of my screen every time I either add a new layer or if I X-reference my drawing in. With X-references, even if I use the same template in my host drawing that I'm using for my X-reference drawing, I'm going to have different layer names, because anyone who uses external referencing knows layer names and external references are prefixed with the file name. So anytime you X-reference, you're going to get new layer notifications. And I understand that a lot of CAD managers don't want their their drawings cluttered up with a bunch of extra layers, but this is kind of a tedious little setting in my opinion. So my tip is to, if you don't want to see that bubble in the bottom right corner of your AutoCAD window that says reconcile new layers or unreconciled new layers present, uncheck the new layer notification. This setting that you see here, the evaluate new layers being added with the little blue and yellow icon, and notify when new layers are present, the blue and yellow icon, these settings are drawing specific. So if I just disable these settings, I'll have to disable those settings in every AutoCAD drawing I open from now until the time I retire. But if I uncheck this setting, new layer notification, which has no blue and yellow icon next to it, it just grayed out that whole portion of the dialog box. I no longer have that notification pinging me whenever I add new layers. Now I get it, some offices will have a hard and fast policy on this, and for those offices I would say don't uncheck that. But if there's no direct policy, On a layer notification, I would say uncheck the new layer notification setting in the layer settings dialog box. I'm going to OK out of that. Turn on thaw all layers. There's a couple buttons. There's so many buttons on the layer property manager that for me, a lot of times they go unused. You know, you kind of get tunnel vision. You're trying to get a drawing complete. You're trying to meet a deadline. Well, here's a drawing called Layer Tricks. I used this drawing some years ago when I was teaching a group of people from a government agency. Their job was to lay out systems furniture like we see here, to take a new space and lay out that space with cubicles from certain manufacturers, right? So of course Mr. Fancy AutoCAD man, Darren, lays out a bunch of furniture in this empty space. I cut an opening in the hallway for a door, and then later on someone had asked me, hey, what does that light bulb, that yellow light bulb button do on the layer panel? And I clicked on it. This button is called Turn All Layers On. And if I left click on this, it turns all layers on. And when that happened, I noticed at least two of the cubicles, two of the workstations that I had installed were occupied by columns. So that was an embarrassment, right? I'm the one trying to show them how to lay these furniture systems out, and I neglected to pay attention to where columns might be. I'm going to undo that. Now I may have known, based on these what I would call furred out areas, that columns were present. You know, most buildings have columns, right? But they weren't showing. So my recommendation to anyone getting drawings from outside sources, imagine I didn't create this drawing. I got it from the building owner, or an architect has asked me to collaborate on a project. I would always say, whenever you get a new drawing, turn all layers on, and then see what's happening, see what might be hidden. And then there's another button, 2 buttons away to the right, called Thaw All Layers. You may have some layers that are frozen as well as off, or you may have some layers that are off, some layers that are frozen. So I'll say Thaw All Layers, and I don't think that affected anything. I don't think any of my layers were frozen there. So I just had some layers that were off. And an important layer, the column layer, a little less important is the column grid. So just kind of think about that. There's a lot of really cool layer tools that we can use to educate ourselves about a drawing. Now, don't worry that you're going to disturb the look of the drawing if you turn all layers on, thaw all layers. In the expanded layer panel, there's a button at the extreme left side of the expanded panel called Previous, and this is almost like undo, but just for layers. So I could issue 160 commands and do a bunch of drawing and insert blocks and stuff. As long as I have not made any layer changes, when I realize I want these columns to sort of revert back, or even just all the layers to revert back to how they were prior to my turning all layers on, I'll open up the layer panel and click Layer Previous once. So that undid the layer freeze, or thaw all layers on. One more will undo the turn all layers on. So I actually issued 2 layer commands prior to whatever else I did. So Layer Previous will help you restore your layers back to how they were when you initially received this drawing. So you're not really disturbing anything, so for the customer or for the client. One other thing, I was teaching a level 2 class. I don't think I put this in. Let's see if I did. So we talked about maximize columns, new layer notification, turn on thaw all layers, layer previous. One other thing I wanted to show you is I was teaching a level 2 class in one of my early days at CAD Microsystems. Instead of having the ribbon, we had toolbars, and the toolbars, kind of laid bare every tool that there was. You didn't have to show all toolbars, but the toolbars that I had showing had a tool present called Layer Walk. And on again, in the expanded portion of the layer panel, there's a layer icon that has a pair of footprints or a pair of shoes next to it. This is called Layer Walk, and this is a student said to me, I'd never seen this command before. A student said to me, hey, what's that button do? Which is, for me, a terrifying question. But I just said, you know what, let's just find out. So I clicked on Layer Walk, and it brings up this little dialog box. And what this dialog box will do for me is, first of all, at a glance, tell me how many layers are in this drawing. There's 22 layers. And then you probably know this if you're an AutoCAD user. Blue indicates active status in AutoCAD. I love that. Blue is my favorite color. I drive a blue Jeep. And so 0, A anno sketch, A area, these are active layers. A column enclosure, A door symbol, A floor handrail. I'm guessing that's what these names are inactive. They are either frozen or locked and what have you. And this is an expandable dialog box, so I can make it a little wider. S grid ident, that's the structural grid, that is also off. So it allows me to see at a glance, there's 4 layers that have been inactivated or turned off, frozen, what have you. Now I can walk based on on this command name, layer walk. I'll start to walk through my layers. Layer 0, nothing on it. A anno sketch, nothing in model space on it. A area, those are my architectural area polylines. A door symbol, A floor handrail. Do I have an A glaze in this? There's A glaze ident. So one of the things you can do with this dialog box, say you're going through your layers and A glaze ident is your window layer, or you go through your A door symbol and you see, maybe I see some doors that look like windows or doors that don't look like they should be doors. Well, I can correct that. I can say, oh, these are doors, but those are not doors, so I need to move those objects to their correct layer. So it allows you to very quickly, in a drawing that you might not know, walk through these layers and determine what is on what layer, or what layer naming is being used by the drawing, by the author of that drawing. Finally, when I close this dialog box, there's a close button right here. When I close this, there's a little checkbox by default, restore on exit. So closing will allow me to exit the dialog box and it will restore the drawing to how it was prior to my use of the layer walk tool. So I'll click close and everything has been restored. So that's a real favorite command of mine. Again, I'll show it to you. I'll open this up, open up layer panel, and again, it's about midway in the middle of, or about the middle of the expanded layer panel. It's your stack of layer icon with a pair of shoes or a pair of footprints next to it. Layer walk. Okay, let me come back to my, we talked about layer previous, layer walk, I added a new one. Layer translator. So I was showing you my layers in this drawing earlier: 0, A area, def points, dimensions, door, hatch 2, plumbing. So I've been with CAD Micro for about, like I said, 15 years. And very frequently we're using something called the National CAD Standard, which really one layer in this drawing, A-area, meets that, more or less meets the layer naming convention for the National CAD Standard. So it kind of, if you're an AutoCAD user, you know the feeling when something's not quite right in your drawing. There's a million ways to use the software, and we don't all have to use it the same, but layers naming standards has kind of gotten under my saddle. So I'm going to use a command called layer translator. This is not really a tip. It's really just how to use this command. But I'm going to show you how to use layer translator, or how I would use layer translator to sort of align the layer names in this drawing with my standard, my office standard, let's say. So closing, I don't have to close the layer property manager, but I will to get it out of the way. Now the tools I want are on the Manage tab of the ribbon. And on the Manage tab, you have a CAD standard panel. And there's a couple tools: configure, check, and layer translator. So what I'll do here is I'll click on layer translator, and this dialog box will show me, or show us the tools that are in the current drawing, the layers that are in the current drawing. So in the translate from area, these are the local layers. All right, so now I'm going to load some layers from a drawing that uses the layer naming convention that I like. So I'll go ahead and click load, and this particular dialog box, the files of type that include for your search can be a drawing, DWG, a standards file, DWS, which is just created by doing a simple save as. Just like creating a template, you can do a DWS file or create a DWS file, or also a DWT file. The benefits of your DWS and DWT is they're more difficult to overwrite, so they're kind of protected. They're typically files that we want to maintain an unchanged state for the creation of future drawings. So they are, it's a benefit that they are a little more difficult to overwrite. Typically, if we hit save or save as, we're saving as DWG files. But enough said. Layer translator names. I'll select this drawing. This is our drawing we create in level 1 for a 4-day level 1 class. I'll click open, and that has loaded these layer names in the Translate To area. So now if I have any layer names that are common between the two drawings, I can just click the Map Same button, Map Same, and that adds 0 and def points, right? So that's not a big help. I'll leave A area unchanged, and I'm going to lean in a little bit because my eyesight is not amazing. I'll find, here's dimensions, and I want to map that to A anno dims, and I'll click Map, Door. I'll find A door, Map, Hatch, and Hatch 2. There's 2 hatch commands here, 2 hatch layers, excuse me. I'll control select Hatch 2, and I'll find A wall architectural wall pattern, select that, and map. Plumbing, P floor fixed. I have to scroll down for that. P floor fixed, map. Roof, A roof, map. Shelf, A mill up, map. Stair, A floor stairs, which is architectural floor stairs, map that. Text, A anno note. A anno, did I not have that? I may have deleted that at some point. That's fine, I'll leave it. I just don't see it, so I'll skip it for now. Viewport, G anno view, map. Wall, A wall, map. Window, A glaze, map. And again, I'm a little flummoxed that I don't have, oh, I'll scroll up. There we go, right? Text, A anno note, map, and there we go. An A area will stay. I don't have an area layer in the drawing that I'm translating to, or the layer names I'm translating to. So now I could do a save, and I could save these layer translations to play back later on. Let's say I keep getting, the drawing I got this drawing from is from Darren's drafting, and Darren never maintains the layer standard. So I'll click save. I'll save these as a DWS file, and I'll just say these are Darren's. Or I don't want. I'll pluralize Darren's drafting layer mappings, like so. I'll click save, and that way, if I get more drawings from Darren's drafting, I can just quickly load the mappings and translate. But now I need to translate, so I'll click translate, and that's it. The command is done. So the first time we do it's a little bit manual, right? You saw it took me a while to map door to A door and so forth. But now back in my layer translator, I look at my layers, and I'll use my right-click menu to maximize all columns because my layer names are a little bit longer. And here's A anno dims, A note, A area, and so forth. And this makes me happy to see my layer names that match my Office standard. Okay, so layer translator on there you are, manage tab of the ribbon. Not really a tip, but it's a command I think that goes underused. And you may notice there's some changes that have taken place in this drawing. Layer window on the QAT. QAT is my lazy way of saying quick access toolbar. Now this used to be a tip. I saw Lynn Allen. If you're an Autocad user, you probably know who Lynn Allen is. I saw Lynn Allen do this first. She would right-click over her layer. I call this the layer control window. Some folks might call it just the layer window or layer control. There's a couple names for this. I tried to track down the Autodesk official name. Haven't quite found it yet. So for me, layer control window, and you can right-click over this, and you can right-click over anything on your ribbon and add it to the quick access toolbar. My favorite is to add the layer window, right? So you can do it one of two ways. Right-click over your layer window, add to quick access toolbar, or 2 or 3 versions of AutoCAD ago, they added that as an option in the customize quick access toolbar menu layer, right? So why do I like that? Well, I'll tell you. Let's say I'm on the insert tab of the ribbon, and I need to insert a door into my drawing, right? I'll go insert, and I go, oh, wait a second, layer 0 is the current layer. I just noticed that, so I'm going to change it. I'll open up my layer control window. Even though I'm on my insert tab, I'll find a door. By the way, that's everyone's favorite layer. Everyone adores it. It's the worst joke ever. I apologize. Insert, I'll go find my door, left click, and I'll just left click and place that there's my door. So it's kind of a convenience, or if maybe I'm doing some annotations and I want to put some text in, I go, oh, the door layer is current. I'll open this up and change to my ANO note layer, and there we have it. One thing I don't think they have. Okay, so a fairly new feature for AutoCAD 2020, it might be 2021, is on your annotate panel, on the text, on the annotate tab, text panel, you can force AutoCAD to use a specific text layer. So I could use ANO for my text, and a setting that's been here for a while is for dimensions. I could say, okay, I don't want to use the current layer, which is ANO. I'm going to change my current layer back to 0. For dimensions, I'll change the current layer to ANO, right? So you can kind of see text allows me to sort of force the layer, the text layer on the text objects. So even though layer 0 is the current layer, I'll go multi-line text, 1 left click, 2 left click. I'll just say this is text layer. It looks like I'm screaming. It's huge text. I'll change that from 1 foot back to, let's say, 8 inches. It's a little bit better. And then for dimensions, I'll dimension something here. I'll go linear, left click, left click, left click. I'm not sure what style that is. I'll see if I can find a better style than that. Dim 1 is pretty small. Yeah, well, I'll use this 1 3/4. Even still, it's not a great, I guess there's not a really, that's not too bad right there. Simplex dims 48, I think is what that said. So if I hover over this, this is a rotated dimension on the layer ANO because of the sort of force layer, dimension layer there. Hover over the text, they're very similar colors. Hover over the text, and ANO is the layer. Oh, that's interesting. It shouldn't be on ANO. Is that what I chose? Yeah, it's because I chose ANO. Sorry, this is live, so it's not impossible for me to make mistakes. ANO note, and again I'll go multi-line text, 1 left click, 2 left click, text, change the height, change all the height to 6 or 8 just because it's so giant. All right, that's why they're so close in color. It was the same layer. Hover over my text. There's mtext on the layer ANO note, and there's dimensions on the layer ANO. So it's very easy to sort of control your layer assignment with these built-in layer assignments for text and dimensions. Okay, but again, the real takeaway there was one of my favorite tips is to add the layer control window and on the quick access toolbar. Okay, so I think that is everything for my layer tips. For a guy who doesn't really like layers, I sure do have a lot of layer tips. Let's talk about the file tabs. File tabs were added to AutoCAD in roughly 2010. You don't really need to know what year they were added, but these are a favorite of mine. I love the file tabs. These are controlled on the View tab of the ribbon. If you're using newer AutoCAD and your file tabs are not present, look to the interface elements of the interface panel, and you'll have file tabs. Again, active elements or active status is highlighted in blue. So my file tabs are present, and the file tabs have some visual cues. That's one of my first tips, the visual cues. On my tips and tricks file tab, now I guarantee you can't see this because your screen resolution and my screen resolution and all that stuff, but this file tab reads this: tips and tricks asterisk. My next file tab says layer tricks asterisk. And then finally, we have this file tab called Layer Translator, no asterisk. Oops, sorry about that. Now there's an asterisk because I accidentally flipped over to that drawing. The asterisk indicates there are unsaved changes in your AutoCAD drawing. So if before and we all know this, you save your drawing often and you save it before you close it and so on. But this is a visual cue. My tips and tricks file, and now layer tricks, and now layer translator names, all three of these drawings have unsaved changes. So I'm going to right click, and I'll use the save all option here. Right click over the file tab and save all. And it's pretty quick. These are three fairly small drawings, not a big deal. So I was able to save all those drawings with a right click. I could right click and save this drawing as some other file type. I can close this drawing, close all the drawings, close all other drawings. This behavior is very similar to some of the open tabs I've seen in internet browsers like Google Chrome and so forth. So it's really nice, a real convenient little setting we have there, or little feature. I'll say right click over your file tab and you can issue your commands. Okay, so hopefully you'll enjoy those things. They do take up a little bit of your drawing window, but I think it's worth it. Right? You didn't ask my opinion, but that's kind of how I feel. The application status bar has a customization menu, and I think a lot of folks know this. And sometimes I'll have people come to my level 2 class or an update class, and I get nervous because I feel like everybody on the planet knows AutoCAD. They know all these tips and everything. But I had a gentleman in class one year, and he's like, "Hey, where did such and such go on the application status bar?" So the application status bar is this status bar, or the toolbar where your model and layout tabs are. And again, those are sort of fostered by on the interface panel. If I turn that off, if ever your model and layout tabs go missing, look to your interface panel, turn that on. You can turn those things on. But they keep adding, they being Autodesk, they keep adding new features to the software, which I think is great. But at some point, they must have come to the conclusion that, look, there's too many things here on the application status bar. So they put in this customization menu. Now, if I click this, the technical term or the generic term for this is a hamburger menu. My sister-in-law told me that. I'd never heard the term before, but it kind of looks like a hamburger, right? It's not the kind of hamburger menu I want to look at that has like cheeseburgers and bacon cheeseburgers and focus anyways. So I'll click on the customization menu, and the things that we see checked here are things that are on and active on our status bar. Coordinates went away some time ago, but you can bring them back. I know people who are in a civil role probably like to have their coordinates. Maybe somebody in a manufacturing role. If you're someone who's creating a drawing that will be used to help program like a manufacturing robot, like an automotive assembly line robot, yeah, you probably want your coordinates. But me, I'm a fire alarm guy. I just put strobes and pull stations and whatever. I don't need coordinates. But if I click coordinates, they come back. There are the coordinates right there. I'll uncheck that. One thing I thought was cool that I hadn't seen was the units, right? I do deal with several different drawing types from several different people, or when I'm in class, I'll have drawings that are metric, drawings that are imperial, drawings that are decimal feet, whatever. Now, it won't break all that down for me, but I can just click units, right? And here are my units. These are architectural. I'll go to the next drawing, and also architectural. Drawing after that, architectural. Oops, not showing. Oh, why not? Because I'm in layout space. If I go to model space, boom, now it's showing. Okay, so that's my standard. I'm typically in architectural drawings, but if I were to create a new drawing, like new, and I'll just use the ACAD template, right? That's a decimal drawing. I would need to change the units on that, and I could do that here. I could just open up my little unit menu and click architectural, and there we have it. So I made that change. I would still need to go to my units dialog box to see what my insertion scale is, but there you have it. All right, let me switch back to tips and tricks drawing. In fact, I'll right click and get rid of drawing 1. Close. I'll say yes. I mean, no, I don't want to save that. Sorry. Train of thought, leaving the station. Close. No. All right. I don't know if you saw anything else that was interesting on the customization menu. They took away the button for dynamic input. When I first started teaching AutoCAD after the 2006 release, dynamic input was added. Dynamic input is this extra stuff at my crosshairs, specify opposite corner, and the coordinate readout. I was like, ooh, I don't think I like that. And so I would turn it off. I would turn the button off, and then I taught probably a whole year of students, which might equate to several hundred, maybe 1,000 students. I said, nah, you don't want to use dynamic input. And then I had one gentleman. He was like, hey, I want information at my crosshairs. I'm like, well, you can turn it on, but you're not going to like it. And I showed him how to turn on dynamic input, and he's like, I love this. And I go, oh, that didn't occur to me that people might like this. So then I started using it, and what I try to do is really leave my AutoCAD fairly uncustomized. I try not to change it too much, and dynamic input is on by default. But you may have some settings you want to add. Like if I go up to my customization menu, click dynamic input, it just restored the button right there, and I can right-click over that and go to dynamic input settings, and I can just make sure I have pointer input enabled, dimension input where possible, and so forth. And one of the things I did was, I believe I ratcheted up the size because my eyesight is going downhill, so I kind of cranked up the size of my tooltips, my coordinate tooltips, and my command prompt tooltips. So that's kind of who I am and how I do things. I'll say okay to that. I can't think of much else that might be dismissed. Your line weight, I think I may have added that back myself. That's typically not on. Line weight is not on, but you can take a look at this when you get your AutoCAD up and running. You can look at what maybe was missing. I wish this was here. I wish my quick properties was still here. That's gone away or whatever. So you can customize your quick access. Your application status bar. If I were to turn all of these status icons on, my icons would wrap onto a second row. That's kind of another feature they added. Instead of spanning and crowding all the way across the application status bar, they allowed them to wrap. So you're seeing two rows of data, two rows of information. All right, so I think we kind of covered workspace switching, how to get back your elements if they go missing, switch to one. I tried this in AutoCAD AutoCAD LT, and of course there's only one workspace in AutoCAD LT, so that wouldn't help you if you're an AutoCAD LT user. You'll need to type the word ribbon, hit enter, Control 9 to get back your command window. I changed a number of recent documents in my application menu, showed you a couple layer tips, showed you some visual cues on your file tabs, and then just showed you on the application status bar where the application menu is and so forth. So let's talk about some methods of selection, right? 2015, they added the lasso, and I wasn't sure how I felt about this, but the lasso kind of looks like this. If I click and hold and I go from left to right, I'm going to make something called the selection lasso, and that is just kind of an organic, kind of a free form. And you see I'm not awesome with it. I was not raised on a ranch, so I don't know how to lasso things very well. But here, let me try it again. The selection lasso just needs to be large enough to select all the objects you're trying to select, and I keep sort of running off my mouse pad. The crossing lasso is just like your crossing window. It starts right and moves left, and I just need to touch things with the crossing lasso. So now what's the tip here? Well, the tip is this. I'm going to type OP and hit enter. Some people like to press and hold, and that's how we create the lasso. Lasso is left click and hold that left mouse button down to create the lasso, but some people like to click and hold and make a window. So in the options dialog box, OP enter, on the selection tab in the selection mode area, there's a little checkbox that says allow press and drag for, down here, allow press and drag for lasso, and that's checked on by default when you install newer AutoCAD. So if you're someone who's not a lasso fan, you just uncheck allow press and drag for lasso on the selection mode area on the selection tab of the ribbon. All right, I'll say okay to come out of that. Again, like dynamic input, I've gotten used to it. I've gotten to the point where I don't dislike this. I'm not great with it, but I could if I could get great with it if I play with it some more. Select similar. This is something that's been around for a little while. It sort of migrated from AutoCAD Architecture, AutoCAD MEP, into straight AutoCAD, and this is one of my favorite methods of selection. If I need to capture multiple things, select similar works like this. I'll left click one circle, right click my mouse, and from the right click menu you'll see select similar. And what select similar will do, let me go ahead and click on this, is it will select similar objects, or the same object, in this case circles, that are on the same layer, in this case layer 0, right? Because I added my layer window to my quick access toolbar. So even if the circles are a different radius value, they'll get selected than the original circle. These 4 circles in the center, I put them on a different layer just so they'd be excluded. So the way this works, now I'll type it. I'll go select, and AutoCAD autocomplete will complete that for me. Select similar, and then I'll go to settings. Down here on the command line, I'll go settings. And this is completely uncustomized. Your select similar settings are layer and name. The name is circle in this case, and then the layer is 0. So you can sort of change that around if you want to. If you have things that are on the same layer using different colors, things that are on the same layer using different line weight, you can fine tune your select similar in that fashion. So I'll say OK to come out of that. Okay. And then quick select. How did I want to use quick select in this drawing? I don't have a great use for quick select in this drawing. I'm going to go to layer tricks drawing, and there's really two layers in use in this drawing for furniture. But first of all, here's where quick select lives. Quick select lives on the utilities panel, upper right corner. Quick select. I'm going to click on quick select, and that brings up a dialog box. And when I'm describing it, when I'm telling you everything about it, it's anything but quick, but it'll be quick when you use it. So we're going to apply a selection to our choice. I'm going to say the entire drawing. What's the object type? I'll say multiple objects. And then what's the property you're searching by? I'll say the layer. Then the operator, I'll say is equals, and then I'll change the value from ADORSIM to I systems fern. We'll see what that one does. Can I do more? I can't do more than one layer. I'll select that and then click OK. And that's not very dramatic, right? Because these tables all look the same. They actually are all different. They all have different names. If I do a control 1 is a shortcut for the properties palette. And you can see here the block name varies. So even though these things are identical, they're all different, or many of them are different. They're probably not created with a traditional AutoCAD. So let's try it again. The quick access toolbar. Geez, I can't talk. Quick select. Again, applying to the entire drawing, multiple objects on the layer, which equals the other furniture is IDET, like detail fern. I'll select that one and click OK. That was a little more dramatic, right? Definitely some different things. Chairs, conference table, assorted furniture, assorted furnishings, allows you to capture these things. So that's a really handy tool. One of the things we do in our this level 1 class drawing, like we dimension the heck out of this drawing. It's like way too many dimensions. And I wasn't there when the original author put this drawing together. My belief is the original author did something like this. I'm going to get rid of all these dimensions in the hallway. And this will just take a second. I got rid of all those. Get rid of some of these ones with the no. Now that I've just did that, like I see what the original author did. But let's see if this will work for me. I'll go annotate tab. I'm going to use my linear tool. I'll go 1 left click, 2 left click, 3 left click. It just made a liar out of me. Oh, so this is drawing specific. Let's delete that, and I'll try again. I don't want to use the current layer. I'll go use ANODIMS, and then 1 left click, 2 left click, 3 left click. There's my first dimension. Now I'll use continue, one of my favorite dimension tools, continue, and I'll go to these different corners. All right, and it took me a while to figure it out, but the original author had just dimensioned face to face to face on the walls, and really you wouldn't do this for a contractor to build. You would do this for a new student to learn how to redraw the plan. So when all was said and done, when you ran through this whole drawing, if you use those tools, you would have an unsightly set of dimensions, first of all, and an unnecessary number of 3.5-inch dimensions, especially when the drawing has general notes to say all walls to be 3.5 inches thick. So I don't need to have all these 3.5-inch dimensions. So I'm going to attempt to use my quick select. I'm going to apply this to the entire drawing. Object type will be, and the cool thing that I think about this is it will only show you object types that exist in the current drawing, right? So I'm looking for rotated dimension, and the property I'm looking for, I'll left click anywhere in the properties window, and I'll type the letter M, which gets me down to measurement equals, and I'll type in 3.5, and then hit OK. And I don't know if you can see that, but it captured all the 3.5-inch dimensions. These are dimensions I don't need to show I'll just hit my delete key. Let's keep me honest. I'll use my erase button. Erase, and that just neatened up the drawing using the quick select command. This thing, I love this dialog box. Again, you're not here to learn what I love. I don't know, but every week I think of a new use for this, a new way to capture things, a new way to select things, and I just think it's fantastic. I hope you will too. Quick select. All right, back to tips and tricks. We talked about all those things there. Quick select, tool palette. If AutoCAD, plain old AutoCAD, sort of comes with some tool palettes, and one of my tips here is Control 3 will bring up your tool palettes. And the tool palettes are sort of generic in AutoCAD. They're preloaded with some 3D modeling tools. I'm going to see if I can get this into a little clearer area. 3D modeling tools, constraints that allow you to apply rules to your line work. Say if I've got a line and I'm going to be sloppy and not use ortho. Here's a line that should be horizontal. I can use this horizontal constraint tool, left click on it, and I'll left click the line. And that line now has to stay horizontal. I can't rotate it and so forth. Anyways, the tool palettes come preloaded, like I said, with some commands, with some annotation objects. So if you don't have a nice call-out bubble in your bag of tricks, these can be added. Let's see if I can add it. I'll go to my layer translator names, and I don't have any annotative scales currently active. Let me try this. I'm going to change my annotative scale here to, this drawing is 3/16 of an inch, and then I'll go call out, and that's really big, but I'll just place it. I mean, it's not that big. I mean, so this is, I don't want to point at the right window. I'll left click on this, and I'll rotate this thing to point at the left window or left wall. So preloaded with some kind of nice features. Drawing title. I'll go drawing title. I'll left click on this one. This one does not auto prompt me to fill things out. I'll just double click on it. Click. All right, now I'm going to say this is level 1 drawing, or let's say floor plan. And then I'll go and hit enter. It takes me down to 1 is fine, enter. And the scale is not 1:1. The scale is 3/16 space equals space 1 foot dash 0 inches. Did I mention I'm not a very good typer? I don't have to, you probably can tell. There we go. So see, there's 3/13. Not, I want 3/16. Now I was watching my keyboard. If my typing teacher, Miss Kershaw, saw me watching my keyboard, she'd smack me in the head with a ruler. All right, so then I'll just adjust the line, the underline. This is dynamic. I can stretch that out. There we go. So the tool palettes come preloaded. They're not going to solve all of your issues, right? I mean, I'm a kind of electrical, and I wouldn't say I've used many, if any, of these electrical push button, imperial, mushroom head button, and so forth. These are not things I use, and that's typical for a lot of AutoCAD users. They're not the things that we use. But what we can do with a tool palette is this. I'm going to right-click over one of the tabs. Right-click. I'll say New Palette, and I'll just call this Tips and Tricks. Enter. All right, so I got a new palette here, and I can actually go to any of these other palettes and copy, and I'll do this. I'll right-click over Layout Grid and copy it, and go back to my tips and tricks. I can right-click and paste this, right? So you can sort of collect the tools you want on your tool palette, not have to deal with the ones you don't like. In our level 1 class, like if you can see this toilet block that we use in the level 1 class is really plain. On the architectural tab of the tool palette, we've got a dynamic toilet. I can right click over this one and copy it, and I'll paste it to my tips and tricks. Like so. So this one's a much nicer looking. I'll click and release, bring it into my drawing. Now it shows up in elevation, but I can change this from elevation to plan. I'll go round plan. Like so. So that's kind of awesome. And so if I have to do bathrooms, I can do bathrooms in elevation. I can do a couple different sizes. This dynamic block has about 8 different ways to display itself. All right, but what else can we do? with a tool palette, I'll go back to my tips and tricks. For some reason, there's a red polyline in this drawing. So why is it here? Well, I want to add it to my tool palette. So I'm going to hit save first, make sure I save my drawing, and then I'll just left click on this this red polyline and I'll drag it. Not by the grip though, I'm going to drag it in between the grips and I'll drag it right onto the tool palette and then release. And it says polyline. And one of the things I want to show you is this particular polyline is on the A area layer. And so if you're someone who has to do space planning, space modification, or space monitoring, you know, like this particular drawing has these polylines. Let's see if this will work for me. I'm going to left click, and I've just started the polyline command, and I'll kind of just go left click, left click, left click, left click, left click, left click, and I'll close this, right click and close. So this has created a polyline on the layer A area, and now I did nest more or less the color. I changed the color for an example that we're going to be using later on. But I could fix that, right? I could right click over this and go to properties, and I could say, you know, the color is not 238/42, it's actually by layer. I could say it's by layer, and that way I wouldn't deviate from any layer standards. One more right click over my polyline, and I'll just rename it. I'll just say this is A hyphen area P line. So I know to use this P line from my tool palette to do all my area polylines, and it will save me time no matter what layer is current. Layer 0 here, left click, this guy's going to come in on the correct layer. You can kind of see it's actually showing the layer now, A area. I'll close it, C enter. Okay, so you can add commands, you can add your blocks. So I have a block here, here's a block called door. I'll just left click on this door, left click and drag it onto my tool palette, and there you go, there's door. The only thing I have to do is save the drawing, right? I saved it first. So the tool palette won't hold the block, the tool palette won't hold the polyline. It holds a path back to this drawing called tips and tricks. And whenever I push the button here, and I can force the layer on this, if I right now layer 0 is the current layer, left click, right, there's my, oh, it came in, because the door I dragged was on a door, it went back on the right layer. So, but you can make sure that if I right click over my door, right click and go to properties, right, where's my layer? There it is, my layer is right there, a door. So kind of a nice little productivity booster. You can add your own tool palette, right? So you can Control 3 as a shortcut to dismiss or enable your property palette. Creating one, you can just right click over any tab and create your tool palette. You can drag and drop tools from other tool palettes onto your current tool palette, or you can drag commands or blocks from drawings onto your tool palette. Make sure if you do that last method, drag and drop commands and drawings from commands and blocks from other drawings, that the drawing you're dragging and dropping from never moves. This needs to be one of your library drawings that stays in place. Pardon me, sorry about that. This drawing will feed your tool palette, and it needs to stay in place. Okay, so one final thing, anchor and use icons only. One of the things I would show early on when I first started teaching is I would show this little gear icon for palettes, and there's a lot of different palettes. On the view tab of the ribbon, there's something like 12 or nearly 12 tool palettes, properties, blocks, sheet set manager, and so forth. These are all different palettes, and they all have the ability to be anchored. If I open up the properties for this palette, allow docking needs to be checked, and it is by default. Then I'll click anchor left, and what it does is it anchors the palette against the left side of my interface, and it spans the entire height of the drawing window, which at some point I won't like, right? So what I'm going to do is I've anchored. Now I'm going to use icons only. So I'll come back over here, right click as far to the left as I can get over the name, over the title portion of the palette, right click and icons only. And now if I come over here and I accidentally come into this zone, I don't launch that tool palette, not until I hover over the icon. Right, so I can do the same thing with properties. same little icon, anchor left. Now all my palettes, excuse me, will be icon only. Let's get my properties up, Control 1, anchor left. And what other palettes do we like? I have layers up there already. I'll stop at that. Well, you know what? One more. Control 2 for Design Center. I do like Design Center quite a bit. But with the additions to the block palette, or the additions of the block palette, Design Center, you almost don't need it. But I'll go ahead and anchor it left. There we go. All right. So we've anchored them, and now I've sort of boosted or increased the functionality, the usability of my AutoCAD interface. I do like these better as icons only, and that was just a left click on the settings icon, ensure allow docking is checked, then choose anchor left, and then finally once I anchored, I just did a right click over one of these and just did icon only, and it just takes up so much less space. All right. Oh, okay. Looks like I'm sort of running out of time here. I've gone a little long. I thought I could do a few more tips and tricks, but I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up. I hope the tips that I did show you were informative and useful. And maybe later on in the month, I can do another webinar and show a few more tips and tricks. Let me switch back into the PowerPoint. All right, so we hope we showed you a few new ways to use AutoCAD with our tips and tricks. I think the big takeaway here is there's several ways to use AutoCAD, and I'm sure you have some great ideas, and hopefully you had a chance to throw some questions into the chat window there. I've sort of been laser focused on the presentation, but I'll take a look and make sure that I haven't skipped any questions. And again, if we're running a little bit short of time, we can always capture your questions and reach out to you via email. So we've talked a lot today about a lot. We've talked about a lot of different tips, and our team is eager to help you with AutoCAD. We welcome your feedback and invite you to enter any questions you might have into our webinar interface. We will continue answering as many as we can until the end of the presentation. Again, I just mentioned this, but if we cannot get to your question during the presentation, we'll follow up with you after the presentation and provide you an answer via email. And for those of you who have to take off, how can CAD Microsystems help you? We can help you formulate an education strategy. We can help you with your installations and your deployments, pilot projects. If you have a project and you're starting that project with new software, we can do some over-the-shoulder assistance. Doesn't have to just be AutoCAD. Of course, that's my favorite, but it could be Revit. It could be BIM 360. And we can help you by creating some content and customizing some of your workflows to make your life easier when you're on the job. And then look for us on CAD Community. CAD Community is a portal that we've set up here, and we've partnered with a company called Global E-Training, and we think they do an amazing job, and a lot of other people around the world think so too. They're a leader in online educational videos. And we have a number of videos that are AutoCAD or Revit or BIM or Navisworks related that you can watch and grow your knowledge base in these pieces of software. We also have custom content where you can download applications to increase the usability of your software and so forth. And we also have tips and tricks videos are there, as are I guess tips and tricks are that I have some 5 and 5 videos that we try to keep them 5 minutes, try to make them short and keep your interest. So please check us out on www.cadcommunity.com, and I'm sure you'll appreciate what's there. And hey, let's stay in touch. Again, my name's Darren Moore. I really appreciate you coming and watching my webinar today. I hope you can tell I like talking about AutoCAD. I went a little long, and I do apologize for that. You can check me out on LinkedIn, reach out to me, talk to me about education if you want some training. It doesn't have to be about AutoCAD. It could be about Revit or any other Autodesk product. And then check us out you can email us at events@cadmicrosystems.com to find out what events are up and coming. Check out CAD Micro on LinkedIn or on Facebook. You can check us out on Twitter. and YouTube, CAD Microsystems on YouTube. Lots of great videos to learn from there. So again, thanks very much, everybody. I'm Darren Moore for CAD Microsystems, and thanks for watching. Again, we'll keep our eyes out for your questions. Thanks so much.